is this Professor Luftus?
It is. How are you?
Very well. This is Jay Michaels. If I'm on the line, you're on the air.
Oh, okay. Very good.
What a pleasure to speak to you.
Well, thank you.
I wasn't kidding when I called you a professor. I think I've learned more about the American theater from your Facebook posts than any of my academics that I deal with.
Well, that's very nice. I appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure. You're also an established playwright, which makes total sense.
I'm trying.
Please tell me and our listeners a little about the Donald Luftus.
Okay. I started out in Cleveland. I came from a really modest home, I would say. My father actually left my mother and her 3 kids when I was 8. So we really struggled. And I think, I've been thinking a lot about that lately with this epidemic, this pandemic, because I just think, I don't know that we would have survived. She lived from paycheck to paycheck. And so it's really sort of hit me this, what's going on here. But I worked in retailing first. I worked for the May Company, which is now part of the Macy's group, and started as like a stock boy, became an assistant buyer, then a buyer, and eventually became vice president of the cosmetics department and accessories, and then was hired by Estee Lauder. Went to my dream was always to live in New York. In 9th grade, my whole life was changed when I came to New York. I saw 4 Broadway shows that totally changed my life. So my goal was to get to New York. I actually came to New York for a theater school when I was 18, right out of high school, and it was $2,000 for the summer for the course, and it turned out that when I arrived, and it might have been $2 million. It was so much money for me. So I get to New York City. I go the first day of school. There's a padlock on the door, and there's all these kids from all over the country, and it was a scam. And it was horrifying. It was because all my friends I'd done a lot of community theater back in Cleveland, and my friends were so excited that I was going to New York to this theater school, and blah, blah. It was so embarrassing and depressing and everything else. So I got a job at Modell's as a security guard. My job was like take the weapons away in downtown Brooklyn as the people entered the store. And it was good. I stayed with 3 actresses. This will be place in there. I stayed with 3 actresses and just watched them struggle and audition and not get anywhere and blah blah blah. So I went back, finished my college education, and worked for the May Company. Became a vice president. Then worked for Estee Lauder. Then became eventually. I spent like 25 years in the cosmetic industry, and eventually became president. I was president of Gianni Versace. I was president of Yves Saint Laurent. I was Procter & Gamble had a division as well, which I eventually became president of, and that was like Hugo Boss, Burberry, Scotta, a whole slew of brands. It was Dolce & Gabbana and Gucci and so on and so forth. So I had a really good career, and I loved it. But all through that, I would write. I was writing plays, and I would wake up at 4 in the morning, as you know, I still do many times.
Indeed.
I would wake up at 4 in the morning and work on a play till 7, and then I would go get ready for work and go to the office and do that. And I would periodically do like stage readings and so on, and occasionally I'd send it to a theater. But I never really had time. I was at this job. So I retired just about 2 years ago, and got very aggressive about. I had like over 30 plays in my computer at various levels of development that were unfinished and whatever. And so I started concentrating on it and really got aggressive. And I would say I'm as aggressive as I was about running the Procter & Gamble cosmetic business as I am with this. So I spend a lot of time. I'm very dedicated to it and very aggressive about it. Much more, I have to say, than a lot of my playwright friends. Because I think I grew up in business, so I have a different approach to it. And I've been really, really fortunate. I've had in just 2 years, I've had 40 productions, and I was accepted into the William Inge Festival this year, which unfortunately got postponed because of the thing, and I won an award from this Hudson Theater. So I've been shocked and thrilled with frankly, with the success that I've had in acceptance. I mean, I'm not making money out of it, of course.
Money in the theater? You've got to be kidding.
I know. and I'm on the board of. So I've always been very involved in theater, and I'm on the board of the Dramatists Guild Foundation, which is the wing of the Dramatists Guild. It's completely separate. It's part of Dramatists Guild, but we're the fundraisers. So we're the ones who put the programs together and raise the funds to support, the writers and creators of theater. And right now we have a big campaign because we're sending a lot of aid out to, the composers and lyricists and book writers and so on and playwrights who are just struggling so much during this pandemic.
Oh,
and so it's been exciting to watch the sort of the theater world come together and support this, and we've helped hundreds of writers so far, so that's been exciting. Anyway, that was a big ramble. I'm sorry about that.
That is not a ramble. That was as fascinating as I would imagine it would have been. You have been president of all these fashion organizations.
Yes. Oh, yes. I was chairman of the thing called Fashion Group International, and then I was also chairman of the Fragrance Foundation, which are two industry. One is strictly the fragrance world, and then the other one is pretty much every fashion house in the world belongs to this. And again, it's to help young people enter the industry and sort of run seminars and that sort of thing. And that was exciting. I mean, I got to meet some great people. It's also all of that, by the way, starting all the way back to the May Company in the early days, into my mother and all that. It's all grist for the mill. I mean, as a playwright, I mean, I met a lot of interesting people, but in some of my cosmetics and fragrance experience, to work with the boys, Dolce & Gabbana, or the Gucci Group, or Yves Saint Laurent, that's a whole trip right there. And then and the whole fashion world. But I also worked with a lot of celebrities because we went through this whole celebrity fragrance craze. So I worked one of my brands was Rihanna and Sean John and Jay-Z. So again, more grist for the playwriting mill, and I have to be careful how I use it so I don't get sued. But there's lots of I had a lot of interesting experiences which can be adapted into plays, or at least pieces of it, into characters and so on. So that it's been, it's funny. I was just telling a friend of mine who's made their whole life in theater, and told me she's had it's Gretchen Cryer, and she was the president of the Dramatists Guild Foundation. She wrote "I'm Getting My Act Together and Taking on the Road." She played Mrs. Jefferson in 1776, and so on and so forth. And her son's John Cryer, the Swedish actor. She told me that in her entire career, she had 3 years where she didn't have to worry about money. Which is horrifying. Here's someone who's really been quite successful, and only 3 years didn't. And she doesn't regret it, by the way. She absolutely loves it. She still loves it, and continues to work in theater. But it's a tough career, and I don't regret the way that I've done it now. I mean, I sort of regretted the 35, 40 years I didn't do it, and do it solely. But as it all works out, it's I'm enjoying it now a lot, and my wife and I have never had to really worry about where our next meal's coming from or how we're going to pay the rent. So I feel like it's sort of got best of both worlds.
I think that's wonderful. Getting off the track. Are you a fastidious dresser because of your fashion?
Not so much anymore. I mean, I sort of had to be back then, but I was also much thinner. That helped. I mean, after this pandemic, I'll have to wear tents, I think. But we had to be very conscious of that. And it's funny to watch how the world is changing so much, because we would never, certainly never go to work without a tie.
Oh yes.
And all that stuff. It's changed, but it's the whole retailing scene has changed so much. I mean, with Amazon and just even the way the millennials shop and think and what's important to them, and I say that on one hand, I'm sort of thrilled not to be in retailing anymore because of that. But on the other hand, I also have great respect because millennials seem to have their heads on straight. They seem to know, what they want. They want to be happy. They want to make a difference. But they're not so much into collecting, in the old capitalistic, let me see how many clothes I get into my closet.
Right.
It's a whole different approach. So it'll be interesting, even as a playwright and as somebody who loves theater, to see how theater changes with this whole coronavirus. And, once we get past it, hopefully sooner than later, how our views will change, what the audience will want to see. I mean, some are predicting, and I hope this isn't true, that they're only going to want happy escapism and, jukebox musicals because, while they have their place, it's not what I necessarily want to spend my money on. But there is a concern that dramas and anything that gets a little too heavy is going to have a harder place. At least on Broadway. I think what will probably happen is off Broadway will probably become very, very important for new work, and I mean it already is, but even more so because producers just aren't going to be able to risk losing money on something that doesn't draw a tourist audience.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how the world changes as a result of this.
I imagine that because independent theater costs so much less to produce than a Broadway play, we're going to see a lot of very powerful dramas, a lot of envelope pushing and unapologetic pieces about the government, about the virus, about people, etc. So ironically, I think we're going to get a massive wave of that first simply because we can afford to. And then Broadway's going to say, okay, enough of that. Now we're going to do something from the 1920s, and everyone's going to be in bright colored things.
Right. I mean, we were already sort of headed that way on Broadway. I mean, there are certainly some wonderful things, Hadestown and Hamilton and Dear Evan Hansen, but there's also a lot of easy stuff that's sort of risk-free for the producer, that tourists love. And I mean, that's fine if a successful Broadway thing allows for New York Theater Workshop or the Signature Theater or the Public Theater to flourish, I'm cool with that.
Yep.
But I agree with you. I think that off Broadway and off Broadway and also outside of New York, the theaters around the country, because there's a lot of pent up emotion over what's going on in this country and in this world.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be a great outlet for it. But then I think we're going to go the opposite way on you're right, on the expensive venues, where it costs a lot of money with the unions and all. And Broadway is, I mean, they weren't making a lot of money per show as it was. And now it's really kind of scary. So it'll be interesting to see when it reopens. Do you know Shepard Studio? Did you hear this?
I heard all about it. I heard them. I heard about the Secret Theater. I heard about UCB. I heard about many who have just said there's nothing we can do.
Yeah, it's really
I come from a marketing background. I essentially did what you did. I had two concurrent careers for the last 30 years. One was the day job working in marketing and public relations, and then obviously feeding my theater fix in the evening. So my strategy as I look at it now is, okay, when things open, great, come to New York to see SpongeBob, but then on your off night, please go see Angels in America or something like that.
Absolutely. And I do. I like, particularly when I was working, when I had a full-time job, I saw everything. And I would even see things like in previews, just to see how they changed once they opened, when they're still rewriting the show and so on. When I was growing up in Cleveland, one of my best friends from third grade on was Mark O'Donnell, who wrote Hairspray. And he told me that when it was on the road before it hit Broadway, that he spent every night rewriting it.
Oh, sure.
Which surprised me. I had no idea that. I mean, I knew there were rewrites and corrections and editing or whatever every single night. And when it was in Seattle, it had a long run in Seattle before it came to Broadway, and it was painful for him. I mean, it all worked out fine. He won Tony Awards and went on to make the movie and so on and so forth. But it was, it's a lot. So it'll be interesting to see.
There's always these theater stories about, oh, well, during the road, this happened and this actor changed, and so because of that, they wrote this song. One of my favorites, which you probably know because you know every theater story according to Facebook, Yul Brynner and Gertrude Lawrence, were becoming more than friends during the original King and I, and Rodgers and Hammerstein saw this during previews, and one day they just said, why don't we capitalize on this? And they wrote Shall We Dance? So that's because both of them were attracted to each other, suddenly they got a veiled love song somewhere in the show.
That's interesting. The one I remember is also Rodgers and Hammerstein, the Oklahoma Story, where it was in Boston and it was doing terrible, this pre-Broadway tour, and it was doing horribly. And the it was just getting panned everywhere it went. And Oklahoma was like a ballad. It wasn't the same song. It was, whatever Oklahoma was at that point was like a ballad. And allegedly, a chorus member came to Rodgers and Hammerstein and said, if you made that like a rousing chorus number, and either if it ends the act or begins the next act, whatever, and did it in this particular place in the show, I think it would change the entire show. And they thought, what the hell? We're doing so poorly at the moment. Let's try it. And it totally changed the show. It became Oklahoma, So there's lots of those. It's I also love the casting stories in theater where this one turned it down and that one turned it down, and it's interesting. But you and I don't regret it. I think you and I did the right thing. I mean, to have the two careers, because one funded the other.
Completely.
One funded the passion, and I'm thrilled at how much I got to see. I would have never seen, and I would have second acted a lot of things. Back in when I was going to that theater school that didn't exist, like in New York for that summer, and I hadn't realized I was so poor. And Luch House used to have this tribute to theater people on Sunday nights, and so they were having a tribute to Sammy Kahn, and so it was my roommate's birthday, so I took her to see it. God knows what money, and so we went to see it. And so I'm talking to Sammy Kahn, and I bought 5 minutes more, the sheet music, 5 minutes more, which he wrote with Julie Stein. Mm-hmm. And so I said, Mr. Kahn, could you please sign this? And he goes, oh my God, Julie, look what he brought. And there's Julie Stein, which, Funny Girl and Gypsy.
Of course.
I'm freaking out. And suddenly it was like the other one didn't exist. And I'm all over Julie Stein. And Angela Lansbury had just opened in Gypsy in London. And Julie Stein says, have you seen Angela in Gypsy? I'm like, I can't even get to Brooklyn. But I didn't tell him that. It was very cool. I just said, oh, no, I haven't, but I know she's coming to New York. And I'm just curious, how different is it from, the Ethel Merman version? And Julie Stein said, Ethel was no actress. Angela will rip your heart out. That was a long time ago, and I remember it was yesterday. Because those stories change your life. And I think that's what's so great about theater. I think that theater, when I was the president of these cosmetic companies, I would run these sales meetings, and I would say to this audience of my sales staff, my sales force during these sales meetings, can anybody remember their first live theater experience? Whether it was in, you were a child and it was a high school production, whatever it was. Can anybody remember the first play you saw? And every hand in the house went up. And I said, now, can you remember the first television show you watched? Nope. Can you remember the first movie you watched?
Mm-hmm.
Nope. But everyone remembers, because theater makes an impact on us that like nothing else, like none of the other arts. And most of and we see a lot, because we subscribe to all the off-Broadway stuff too, and we see a lot, and I remember every one of them hits me, in some way, some more than others, obviously, but they all make an impact, even the bad ones. So it's a wonderful art form.
I've always looked at movies and television as a marriage, because they in many ways are there forever, and we can always revisit over and over again. But theater is an affair. You're going to something that one brief time, and you'd better remember every bit of it, because it is completely gone.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And even that you see that night, the audience the next night is going to have a different experience. It's going to be a different audience, different reactions, everything. So yeah, it's really something.
Chita Rivera once made the comment that everybody if she tallied up everyone who came over to her and said, I was there opening night of West Side Story, there would have been about 1 million people in the audience.
I know. All of my friends saw Moose Murders. It only lasted 1 night. Everyone saw it.
Jeez, you got to wonder why it didn't succeed then.
I know, right?
What do you see out there? You're in this. You're now at a very interesting point. You have spent. Again, my professor remark is that much more interesting, because you have spent years studying it. You've been in one career, you've been prosperous in that career, but you've been watching the growth of theater, and then you jumped right into it. What have you seen is the continuing trends? What do you see keep coming back? What's your vantage point for the American theater?
I think that I'm fortunate as a member of this board for the Dramatists Guild Foundation, I'm exposed to people like Doug Wright, who's also on the board, and some of our great living writers. And what's true of all of them, all the successful ones, both the composers, lyricists, and the playwrights, is they have a real heart. There's a real human connection, and I think that what will always work, all the way back, to probably Greece and Shakespeare and whatever, are stories where probably the protagonist goes through a journey and is different at the end, and somehow has taken the audience with them. And you too, Harold Prince once said, in Cleveland actually, I went to hear him speak at the Cleveland Playhouse, and he said, when I leave the theater, I want to be a different person than I was when I entered. And I think about that all the time. And when I see a great play, Angels in America or whatever, and I move to the point where my attitude, this is going to change the way I approach this or that, or think about this or whatever. To me, that's really great theater, and I think that will be the keystone. I mean, things, the jukebox musicals or whatever you want to call them, they can make you happy for 2 hours, and I don't think they're necessarily going to change your life, and I don't necessarily think they're going to be revived in 50 years. But the real, the Eugene O'Neills and the Tennessee Williams and so on, that move us, and whether we're conscious of it or not, change us in some way, I think will always be important, sort of this core of theater.
I agree with you and Harold Prince. I was just saying the other day in an interview myself that if I can forget that there are wires pulling the set, that there are no wheels on the bottom of that living room, if I can forget that there's a curtain, that this is if the lights come up and I go, oh, that's right, I'm in a play, then they definitely did their job.
Yeah, I was doing something. In fact, I think it was on Facebook. We were talking about Doug Wright's "I Am My Own Wife." That was a one-man show. When I think about that play, because the actor played several characters, I in my mind see an entire cast. I believed that there were several people on that stage. It was, in my memory, even though there was one actor, and he was astounding. And I agree with that. As a magic, I mean, that we can see a play with no set and feel like it was all there. After we saw it in our minds,
exactly.
It's brilliant.
Exactly. There's a story once of this is an old French drama of the late 1800s, early 1900s, and a patron came over to someone at the box office and complained and said, "Did you have to have that clock ticking all through the piece? It was annoying." And the person he spoke to said, "Sir, there was no clock ticking at all. It was a murder mystery that talked about a clock ticking, and it was so deep to him, he heard it ticking in his head." What's your mission statement as a playwright? If we were to see a play of Donald Luftus, is there a particular style or something we should look for?
Yeah, I write, surprisingly, for me, you don't know me, so it's not surprising for you, but for my friends and family, I write really heavy stuff. I write really heavy dramas, and one that was produced, or things that people who know me just wouldn't expect to come from me. I wrote one called Pear, which is about it's a murder mystery in a way. This young kid has murdered his father, and it's a true story. It's based on the first. It's based on the last beheading in Scotland or something. I mean, it goes back to like 1800s, but I made it present day, and it's really eerie and it's creepy. And I went to see it. It was done in a theater in Mesa, Arizona, actually, and I said Texas, I think, but it's Mesa, Arizona, and. I sat there and thought, geez, who wrote this? I mean, it's I write very heavy stuff like that. I just finished one. They say that playwrights are told that your best work will be the one that's most autobiographical. And I just finished one called Driftwood, which is and this is one that's sort of like based a little bit from a story from my cosmetic background. Richard Avedon did a whole series. I don't know if you ever saw them, but he did a whole series of photographs of his father right before the father died. And they're eerie, and they're each portrait. At first, he just looks old and sick, and then he looks very, very frightened, and then like in the fifth one, he looks very, very calm, and then his eyes are closed. The last one, it's an amazing piece, and I saw it when I lived in Boston. So in this particular play, this New York photographer is called home to Cleveland because his father is dying, and the father feels he never had anything to do with the success of the kid's career, or the guy's career. He's not a kid anymore, and he wants to help him win this major photography award. And so he says to the son, "I need you to do something for me. I want you to photograph my death." And the photographer is totally freaked out. But first of all, there's no love lost between these two guys, and then as the play progresses, you find out that, and this is where it's autobiographical, because you find out that the father left when the kid was 8, and the family, and he came back and remarried the mother, but the father and son have never gotten along, and so on and so forth. And so all this gets unraveled through the dialogue they have during these photo sessions. He finally agrees to do it. He does it for the mother. He agrees to take these pictures. And so over the days during these sessions, they sort of relive what's got them both here, kind of thing. Again, it's very heavy. And maybe a little, it hasn't been produced yet. It just had one reading. And it was scheduled as part of this. There's a festival in New York called the EAT Festival, Emerging Artists Theater Festival of New Plays, and it was scheduled for that. In fact, last weekend I think it was, but unfortunately it was canceled. So, and I think it's the one that actually got me into the Inch Festival. So it'll be read at the William Inch Festival next year. But I think it's my best. I don't know because it hasn't had an audience yet. But again, it's sort of heavy. I've also written music. I've written a couple of three musicals. I don't write the music, but I write the spoken lyrics, and those are much lighter and much funnier. One is an adaptation of the Apple Annie story, the Betty Davis Pocket Full of Miracles,
right,
David Runyon, and so those are lighter. And I have a couple of comedies in the works, but like I say, I have a slew of plays that are in various stages of development. I'm hoping that during this, however long we're going to be locked up here, I'll be able to get some of that done.
Where does the darkness come within you?
I don't know, because I'm really, this sounds horrible to say, but people tell you I'm a funny person. Like I'm not depressing, I don't think, or anything like that. But there's, and I find that true of like the playwrights that I know. I also belong to two playwriting groups. One that's dramatist, it's called the DGPG, or PG. Yeah, Dramatist Guild Playwrights Group, so DGPG, and another group called Pages. And the playwrights there too are often, their work is completely different than who they are. From a personality standpoint. I don't know what that's about. But even the successful ones that I know from the board are nothing like their work, It's not really what you'd expect from them. So I don't know. I don't know where it is.
There's the story of Vincent Price, and they once asked him if he minded playing all these macabre roles. And he explained that early in his life he played these innocent kid roles, and then he played these matinee idols, and he got really tired of these parts. He wanted to play the heavy. So when they said, "Here, do Edgar Allan Poe," he was like, "Yeah, great, no problem." So,
that's I love this.
So I guess you were too nice.
Well, it could also go back to possibly. I'm not sure this is it, but that's what I like in theater. I am much better going to see a heavy drama, like rip my heart out. The one that recently came from London. What's it called? The Inheritance. I didn't love the second half, but the first half. Did you see it? The Inheritance.
No, I did not.
There's a scene at the end of Act 1 that everyone in the audience was sobbing. It was so powerful, and I thought, wow, this is. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Where young people, old people, men, women, everyone, they were all sobbing at the end of Act One. And I love that, so maybe that's why I tend to write heavier, I suppose. On the other hand, though, I have to say, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, I hate the fact, and I just watched some scenes from Plaza Suite, the original Plaza Suite. I hate the fact that Neil Simon, who was so huge when we were growing up, is so distant now. I mean, he doesn't get produced, and then they tried to open 3 of his on Broadway. I don't know, maybe it's been 10 years already, but a number of years recently now, and it didn't work. And what's that about? How his plays were classic comedy?
Comedy is subjective. I've always discovered that. Firstly, it takes a genius to make people laugh. There's a sense of timing in there that mathematicians wish that they had in terms of comedy. But because we all laugh at certain things in our lives, as the world changes, it's just not funny anymore. I think Neil Simon's brilliant, but if I were to watch The Odd Couple, I would have to look at it as a classic and think to myself, okay, where else do they have such apartments like that in New York? And what are we calling 2 guys that live together but they're not gay? What's going on? As the world's norms change, what makes us laugh changes, and I guess unfortunately, poor Mr. Simon is of a non-millennial era. When you get down to it,
it's surprising that. But you're right though, and I think probably, television has evolved so much too, because we once had 3 channels, we now have 3,000. So things like Netflix and HBO and all that have probably taken some of the things that could be in a Neil Simon play that couldn't be on the 1960s CBS.
Exactly.
So we were just, it's not funny to us anymore. You're right.
Well, it's also a matter of the language. We don't want to hear just, hey, get out, what are you doing? No, we want to hear someone scream 4-letter words.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of humor, speaking of the lighthearted, I got to know you from Facebook. You are a fount of wisdom on Facebook. Every day there's 2 or 3 pictures from different movies. Every day there's a new Did You Know, and on this day. What got you into this incredibly time-consuming task of being the sage of Facebook?
It is very time consuming. But I started I think 6 years ago, and it started with born on this day, one person, and then and on this day, this event, one event, that was it, and then and I didn't do the caption thing yet, in need of a caption. But then because I've been doing it for 6 years, so then the next year I would take whatever I had last year, which is still on there in your memories file on Facebook, and I would add one, and then it kept building. And there are days where I wake up and oftentimes at 4 o'clock is when I'm doing this, and I'll look at my memories from last year, what happened on this day, and because there's 6 years of it now, it'll be endless. And I think, first of all, does anybody really want to read all this stuff? And secondly, do I really want to spend this much time on this? So a lot of it is a rehash of what I've run for the past 6 years, so it's not all new. But I do have to, if they're still living, if whoever's birthday it is or whatever, I do have to check to make sure that something didn't happen, and it usually has. They've either done new work, or they've become ill, or they've done this or that. So I have to update them. And then some of them are just, every now and then I'll do a perennial favorite, because some of them get a huge reaction, 50 comments over some of these things. And it's year after year that they don't tend to remember them, thank God. It's always fresh to them. And, so it's fun. But with the thing that's time, I do this, in need of a caption, where I'll take an old photograph from the movies and just say that, in need of a caption. And the wit of the people, they're hysterical, sometimes very bawdy, and then they'll get in fights with each other, which drives me crazy. So it actually takes too much time. And there was one point where I was sort of getting fed up, because they were fighting amongst each other and insulting each other. When I'm talking about the participants, and I said, you know what, this is now taking up too much time. It's interfering with my playwriting. I think I'm just going to stop now. And that got this huge backlash of people saying, "Oh, please don't stop." So I keep it going, and I've met a lot of really fun people. Ken Fallon, the artist, who does a lot of the Broadway stuff, we became friends because of that, actually. And like Carol Bayer Sager plays every day, which is very funny. I've never met her in my life, but she plays every day and wins a lot. So
I remember actually seeing the comment somewhere that said, "Okay, I have to concentrate on my playwriting, so I'm going to hold off on this or something." And I thought, "Oh, that's too bad." I didn't go crazy. I just thought, "Oh, that's really too bad. I like these." Every day, I have to tell you, it's like the Facebook is not complete until I see what you've written. And I thought, "Oh, okay, well, I guess I'll see him once a week or something like that." And then the next day, you had double the amount or whatever. So yeah, I imagined the backlash.
And my wife said I was doing it as a ploy to get attention. I really wasn't. I really thought enough's enough. And there are a couple of people in there who fight all the time and get really nasty. I mean, I was like, who needs this? And I would delete them, and then they'd write up again. And now they're all sort of behaving themselves. So okay.
Well, there you go. You've corralled the theater bunch.
Exactly.
I have to thank you on two levels. Number one, I am a far more intelligent man in terms of the arts because of you. I can't even tell you how many parties and meetings and classes where I'll say, "Did you know that today?" And I'll do whatever you had there. You had something about Orson Welles once, and you had and today I had no idea that Stephen Sondheim was snubbed by the Tonys for Forum. So I have to thank you. I'm a smarter theatrical person because of you.
Oh, good.
And I must also thank you for this. This was a wonderful chat. I will let you know when it's up on Facebook. It has been a pleasure speaking to you. I've always wanted to learn more about you because you seem like a brilliant man and so connected to the industry, and it seems you're connected to many industries. And
I'm very flattered, and thank you so much. And I've enjoyed this too very much. So
good, I'm glad.
And thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you. Same to you. Ciao.
Thanks.